Welcome back to another live stream. Nobody's here yet, but we'll let things get rolling on tour this week. Cast of characters tour. Right now we're in Palm Springs, and I said earlier that we're going to do a live stream. So here we are doing a live stream. Lucas got tired though, and he went to bed. So it's just me, but we're going to do the live stream with Lucas tomorrow, I think. He decided to go to bed. So thanks for your questions for that live stream with Lucas. We're going to do that again, like I said. We'll do that tomorrow. But today I wanted to just jump on and go back to some of the questions that I got from last week that I didn't get a chance to answer, and get it recorded and get it thrown up on the internet sometime this week or next week. So thanks for being here. As always, feel free to throw in some questions into the live stream. And if you don't have any questions, that's totally fine. I have plenty to go from here from last week's Q&A that I could not get through all the way. So having a little trouble here on the road before I get into it. My lips are getting super dry, and a little hack for people. I usually say get vitamin E, the capsules, and pop them open, and then kind of rub them on your chops, because I have my chops kind of split right here. They happened today while I was driving, but because they got kind of sore from playing the night before. We played at the Blue Whale on Sunday, and it was a fun gig, but I played probably a little too hard. But today I found this, which is vitamin E oil, so you don't even have to pop open the vitamin E capsules. You can just put the oil right on your chops. So little fun fact. I'm not some people use that chop saver stuff or something else, but I'm not a big fan of that. But I just use the vitamin E stuff. So if you're having any chop problems, that's chop dryness problems, or your lips are splitting and stuff, that's what I go to. Just this vitamin E. This is vitamin E oil. But anyway, welcome. Thanks for being here. And like always, feel free to drop it in here. It says, where did I get this vitamin E oil from? E-Bouts Music said that. And I got that at Walgreens, just in the vitamin area. I was going to buy just the capsules like usual and pop it open and then, put it on. But I'm not a medical doctor. Don't know why it works, but it's always worked for me. Somebody told me to do that, and it's always worked really great. So actually, it might have been Nadia Nordhaus, great trumpet player. But yeah, so that's that. That's my little problematic tour problem, number one. But all is well. And we're playing tomorrow night, Wednesday, March 11th in Palm Springs, California. So if you are in the area, or if you know anybody in the area, feel free to send them our way. The series is called Jazzville, and we'll be at that Jazzville place tomorrow at 7 o'clock. So if you are in Palm Springs or know someone, send them our way. And then we're off to Denver and Reno, and that's the end of this first leg of the tour. But it's been really fun so far. But I'm going to jump in here. This is a pretty long question. But it's from Augustus Bradbury, trombone. That's his handle. But it's a pretty long question, so give me a second to read it all. He says, this is for the Q&A session post that you put in your story. My question was too long, so he sent me a DM. He says, I'm currently studying music, and I'm getting a BA in music. My school doesn't offer a performance degree, and this is the closest thing to one. I want to continue my studies at the graduate level. The end goal is to teach at the college level / perform. My question is, what is the process that you send your students through when looking for grad school? My professor has given me insight on this topic, but I want multiple views. Could you explain some degree tracks? For example, I want to study trombone performance, and I want to study both classical and jazz. Some schools offer both degrees, trombone performance, jazz trombone performance. I want to be a well-rounded musician. What do you recommend? Thanks for considering. I'm enjoying the album. Well, I'm glad you're digging the album. Am I ever going to play in Orange County, Kaibisi? I don't know. Where should I play in Orange County? I didn't know there was a venue in Orange County. You'll have to tell me. So Augustus, I guess let me try to answer your question in a few parts here. I think that when you're trying to get a master's degree, you should think about a few things, and that's location, your goals, in life, your goals for what kind of music you want to be playing, the place you want to be living, the type of colleagues that you want to have, peers that you want to have, and try to go towards that place for your master's degree so that you can kind of blur the line between your school career and your, quote unquote, real life or real career. It shouldn't wait until school's over to start. I think you should start as soon as you can in your professional performance career while you're in school. So I would highly suggest not waiting around for that. So figuring out where you want to be at. And then secondly, like, who is the teacher that's doing the things that you want to be doing that you could go to them and try to, get that information from them, whether it's, a classical teacher that's playing in an orchestra and also teaching at a college, or it's somebody who's a great freelancer or a great doubler, or is someone that, I don't know, could be anything, but trying to identify what it is that you want to be doing in terms of your performance career and teaching career, and then going to a place that has a teacher that has that expertise. I think that's important. I think not going into a lot of debt is also important for grad school. As a person that went to kind of expensive schools, I would kind of suggest, making sure that that's something you're thinking about. It's not important, So I would think about where you can get a good deal, The piece of paper is just the start. The piece of paper is not necessarily going to be the thing that allows you to work in the world. It's just not. And you should think about which kind of track you want to take. Like a master's degree is kind of a specialized degree. I don't think you should try to do too much in a master's degree. That's what you should be doing in your bachelor's degree. If you're getting a BA, that's totally cool. You can't get a performance degree, but you should be checking out jazz and classical and pop and rock and everything. You should be doing all of that stuff. And when you're in undergrad, you should be trying to get a broad sense. And then the master's is kind of, in my view, something to focus you more towards a track to follow later in life through past school. So if it was me, I think that's what I would do. I would want to focus, not get broader. We have some students that auditioned this year at UNT and wanted to be jazz and classical master's students. We're kind of saying, like, you need to pick. You can't do everything all the time. You have to have some kind of specialty. I think obviously we want to be well-rounded musicians. We attack our weaknesses. We try to get better at all the things we're bad at, and that's something that I'm a proponent of. But you can't always be the best at everything, and you got to kind of pick where you think you want to be going and doing, and going to a teacher that's going to allow you to do all those things that you want to do. So if someone is a freelancer and you want to be a freelancer, you should study with someone that's doing all that stuff. So I think those are a bunch of thoughts about this. It really comes down to what your end goals are. So I would work backwards from the end, think about where you want to be, think about who you want to be playing with, all that kind of thing. And then be honest with yourself about, the level that you're at and what types of programs you can get into, and what are some aspirational places you want to go to. It's not necessarily the end of the line with a master's, because if you want to be teaching college, you have to have one of two things. One is extensive performance experience, playing with, people, like in New York, if you want to be a jazz musician, in New York or in LA, doing like high level jazz stuff. And if you're not doing that, then it's going to be difficult for you to get a college teaching degree, or I'm sorry, not to get the degree, to get a job without that experience or that piece of paper. So I would definitely recommend that you think about that. So you either got to get the performance experience or you got to get a doctorate. So the master's is really just setting you up maybe even to get a doctorate later on. So it's not the end all. And I know this was a long answer and a long question. It's taken up the last 7 minutes or something like that. But I thought it was a very thoughtful question from Augustus Bradbury. And so, Augustus, thanks for the question. And as always, feel free to drop some in here. I see someone has left one. What's up, Will B. Marks? Hello. I never heard from Kai Bisi, that's his name. Sorry, I was scrolling back, about where to play in Orange County. If somebody has a good lead on a venue in Orange County, California, I'd be happy to play there, but I don't know any. All right, here's a question. Let's see. These are questions. These are questions from the other live stream that we're going to do later. But great. So we're going to do those next time with Lucas. Like I said, if you're just joining us now, Lucas is sleepy. So he went to bed. But I'm still doing this live stream because I said I was going to. So let's keep on going. If you got questions, feel free to drop them in. But there were some other really good ones that we talked about. But we didn't get a chance to talk about all of last time. So this was another really great question. Skewing jazz, trombone specific, but if you have other topics you want to talk about, feel free to share. Oh, here we go. Cook's Chapel at the Anaheim Packing House in OC is a great one. Okay, all right, I'm going to look this up right now. Cook's Chapel, Anaheim. All right, I'll check it out. Thank you for the suggestion, Tucker. Much appreciated. The next question here is some essential albums to check out specifically by trombone players. I can only say from my experience, because there's so many records out there, but I'll tell you the ones that made the biggest impact on me, and that was J.J. Johnson In Person. Just says In Person on it. There's also J.J. Johnson Trombone Master. And then for me, the other big trombone record is actually like Blue Train and a bunch of the Art Blakey records that Curtis plays on. So for me, the JJ records, In Person, and then there's the one with the octet with Kai Winding and 6 other trombones. Those were huge for me. There was a double CD that was JJ Trombone Master and also that one, the octet, and so that was hugely influential on me. Powell Trombone 87, he says, Nick, do you like to play salsa trombone? When I was in college, I played probably 4 salsa gigs a week. It was super fun, and I loved doing it. But when I got to New York, I didn't play that many salsa gigs for whatever reason. From what I heard, the scene had kind of changed, and there was less work. But I really do enjoy that. Really dig Barry Rogers and all those guys that really did it great. And there's so many bands I was checking out that had a cool instrumentation. It was like 3 trombones and flute. That's pretty cool. And I got to play with a lot of salsa guys used to come through Rochester. There's a pretty big Puerto Rican population in Rochester, so there was a big festival every year, and there would be great artists coming up to play, and so I had the opportunity to play with a lot of them, which was pretty cool. But other essential jazz trombone albums, I like Slide Hampton on Dexter's album Day in Copenhagen. That one I find to be essential. And then let's see, I really just focus on that JJ stuff. I did anyway, the In Person and Live at the Opera House. And so there's like 3 or 4 records of JJ's that I just dove in super deep and kind of checked out for a really long time. And I didn't go necessarily that broad right away. There's a lot that I would recommend now, but basically JJ and Curtis were the 2 that I focused on when I was in high school, and that was through Blue Train, and that was through those JJ records I mentioned. But beyond that, I really like Lawrence Brown, and Lawrence has a great record called Slide Trombone, and that one is a really good study of like that period of trombone playing that's like post-swing but pre-bebop, so kind of like, even though it's after the bebop era was recorded, like it's still that type of playing, because Lawrence played with Duke Ellington for a long time, and he was part of that swing era, so he's got all that kind of like swing era vocabulary that I really dig. It's like pre-bop, pre-JJ, so there's that record too. But I could just list records forever, so I'm not going to try to do that. But thank you to Aiden Schultheis Music. Sorry, I'm butchering your name, but I appreciate the question. There's a couple more here. Let's see. Have you met Arturo Sandoval, and how do I get better at arranging? No, I've not met Arturo Sandoval. He's a great trumpet player, though. Huge sound, which I really, really dig. How do I get better at arranging? You get better at arranging by arranging. You get a band and just start rehearsing regularly. Bring arrangements in. If you're in school, bring something in every week. Just force yourself to do it. Transcribe arrangements that you like. If you want to get better at three-horn writing, then transcribe three-horn arrangements. If you want to get better at big band writing, transcribe big band arrangements, or get scores and check it out, because there's, a lot of things that go into it in terms of your own reconception of the piece. Like, how are you going to redo it as an arrangement, or are you just going to like voice out the melody? You can do that, or you could be totally rearranging it. So trying to separate those different elements of like organization and then reharmonization, the flow of the chart, and then you have things like orchestration and like voicings, which are like super specific. So you want to kind of check out all those different things, but start arranging and transcribing what you're trying to arrange. And then Alf_Flowers, he asks, what's a good arrangement of Autumn Leaves that you've heard? Miles Davis. Good arrangements. There's a great version of Autumn Leaves by Cannonball Adderley on a thing called Great Love Songs. It's with an orchestra. It's pretty hip. I would send you to that one. Ebouts Music. That's J.J. Johnson Live at the Opera House. That's the one with Stan Getz. That's the one. Mateo Zamora Music. He says, Marshall jokes, ? What about Marshall? Love Marshall. He's amazing. I love his stuff. I think the first time I heard puddle jumping, I almost quit playing trombone, I think. That was when I was in college when that came out. So I did my best to learn it at one point. I couldn't play it for you right now. But yeah, Marshall is super inspiring and a cool guy to hang out with. And we've played some gigs together. When did I see him last? I think at the Gen Conference I saw Marshall. So yes, I like Marshall, if that was the question. Not sure if that was the question. But as usual, feel free to drop in some questions here on Instagram, or if you're watching later on YouTube, feel free to leave some in the comments and we'll get to those in the next live stream. Yes, Rich Madison. I've heard of Rich Madison. He used to teach at UNT where I teach now. There's some albums, some vinyl records of his in my office that have been floating around UNT. So, yeah. He is, I don't know, Richard McDonald, this is who asked that question about Rich Madison. I just recently heard of him, and I'm not sure how known he is. I think it depends on the circles that you run in, but I try to know as many people as I can, try to get as deep as I can amongst, low brass jazz stuff. So, I think he's pretty well known within certain circles. So, yeah, definitely worth checking out. Everybody's worth checking out, in my opinion. So there's some more questions here. Feel free to, like I said, drop them in here, but I have some more that I didn't get to really talk about. One that I just want to reiterate here was one from Richiro.f. He says, how do you get a consistent tone? The answer there is to do long tones. And then the second step of that, which I didn't really get to in the last Q&A, about consistent tone, is doing whisper tones. So what are whisper tones? Whisper tones are, playing like right on the edge of the sound starting and stopping. So what I like to do is go from no sound and blow until it's right on the edge of actually buzzing, and you hold the note right there at that very, 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 very soft sound. Why do we do this? Well, it's because you're feeling right where on the chops the buzz is starting, and you'll be able to pinpoint exactly how much air you need to start the buzz, and then you can hold it, and it helps to purify the sound a little bit. Like if you get a little fuzzy, like my chops are a little beat up after that gig the other day, so when I play tomorrow, I'm going to definitely be doing those whisper tones. So long tones, whisper tones. Wynton Marsalis talks about whisper tones too. You can do them with or without tongue. It's really hard to do them with tongue, so I do them mostly without. And we used to talk about those with Steve Turre as well when I was in school, doing those whisper tones, and they've been super, super helpful. So if you're trying to develop your tone, I definitely recommend doing that. Let's see. So I'm going to jump into this question. I'll answer this one first. Trevor.Furman, I think. He's got no vowels in his name here on Insta, but he says, how can I prevent double buzzing? That is a good question. How can I help you with that? Double buzzing usually happens when something is just kind of fundamentally wrong with how you're playing, like either you're overplaying or doing whisper tones and stuff like that. You're not like focused. The embouchure is maybe buzzing in two different places. If you do those whisper tones that I was just talking about and kind of focus on getting one spot that's actually doing the work, it's actually creating the sound, that could be pretty helpful to stop the double buzzing. Maybe you're blowing too hard. Maybe you're blowing more air than your horn can handle if you're playing a small instrument. I don't know exactly what the situation is that is causing the double buzz or when you have a double buzz. Sometimes it happens when people are tired. When their chops get tired, they start to double buzz and stuff. So I would recommend backing off. I would recommend trying to find more efficient ways of playing, buzzing, maybe, or just buzzing, trying to use the air to make the buzz. Sometimes double buzzing comes from too much pressure, and sometimes it comes from like activating two different spots on your chops. So doing those whisper tones, again, can really help you zone in and kind of focus on one spot on your embouchure. That's where the sound is coming from, so I would recommend that as a place to start. Hopefully that's helpful to you, Trevor. So another question. So this one, it might be a little bit of a longer answer, but I figured I talked about this on an interview earlier today with a jazz journalist, and so it's kind of been also on my mind. So Nick Rolls Music, one of the students from UNT, he asked, what was your process for composing cast of characters? So I often talk about, and this kind of relates to the arranging question as well, something I stole from a master class with John Clayton, the great bassist. He talked about something that kind of changed the way that I think about music, orchestration and composition. He just said, he didn't say directly related to this question, but what he said was that he sometimes will write down in words his plan for a chart, for an arrangement or a composition, and just plan out the events, like what is going to happen or what's the mood, or just general things in words that help you to focus your thoughts. And it's totally changed the way that I organize my compositional time and helped me really get all this music together for this record. So what I did was I kind of decided that I was going to do the record that was going to have these characters, and I kind of decided that I wanted to have different moods, and I wanted a bunch of little short pieces to kind of intersperse between these character pieces, which is kind of how the record is organized. And so what I did was I wrote out in words like different characters that could be featured in this thing, like who are they, or what are they, or what are the archetypes of these people, or what are the things that are interesting about them, or what is the mood, what are the emotions, what are just different words that describe it. So I started writing things down in terms of words, in terms of feelings and emotions and events and stuff like that. So I didn't necessarily start just directly writing a tune. I started by brainstorming ideas that were just words and emotions and thoughts and events, and like, wouldn't it be cool if we did something that was just drums and horns with no bass, and all different textures and just ideas that I could start to organize. And then what I did was I decided that I wanted the whole record to be tied together with a certain amount of compositional material that was the same or similar. So I've said this before in a different video, but I won't go into this too far, but just there's a triad pair that I based it on. And so then what I did is I took a big piece of staff paper, like a big band chart size staff paper, and I just started writing all different ideas all over this piece of staff paper. So it's just a total mess. And it's just like, here's a chord sequence, and then here's a melody snippet, or like, what happens if I put, it was D and D flat. So what happens if I put D flat over D? And what happens if I put a D over D flat? Like, it's different sound, different timbre, different texture. What if I eliminate one of the notes? So I just have 5 of those 6 notes. What if I have 4 of those 6 notes? What kind of other chords can I make with those notes? What happens if I put alternate bass notes? What happens if I plane them over a pedal? Just like all different ideas. And then I started to match up the ideas with the emotions and the thoughts that I was having about, what those characters could be, and just kind of like a puzzle, matching up the emotion and the feeling with what the idea sounded like with the idea that I had in my head from this John Clayton thing, this writing of the words and organization down. So I went about it that way, and I wrote it that way, and then I used some like Bob Brookmeyer type techniques that I learned from a teacher of mine at Eastman named Dave Ravello, just about, breaking stuff apart and finding other ways of organizing it and to make it kind of sound similar. So using things like retrograde and, nerdy music stuff. But I'm kind of a big fan of set theory, so I kind of, not a big fan, but a fan of using that as a way to organize stuff. Because I just find the idea of like putting it onto that kind of pitch wheel, if you know what I'm talking about, putting on the pitch wheel and then like turning something or like changing it by one note or something, like it's super interesting how it sounds connected, but it's different, and trying to use some of that math in there. So anyway, that's the kind of story about that. And then I've been writing for my band for so long that I kind of have an idea of what guys can do, and I try to challenge them and mix up different timbres and textures. And so in this case, trying to get a whole record worth of material. So that's kind of the 10,000 foot view of how I did the process. I'm going to record some videos more about each piece one of these days when I get some extra time, and cut them together with the videos of the tunes. We got 6 of the singles out now, but there's not 8 other, but there's a bunch of other pieces there. So some questions coming in on the live stream. I'm going to back up so we can get to them all here. So Chris Bauer asks, what notation software do you use? Finale. I liked your big chord symbols. What font were those in? Futura, maybe? I forget exactly. I've messed around with a bunch of different fonts, but you got to go into the settings and change the fonts. If you want a great source for all things engraving, go follow Darcy James Argue on Insta and Facebook. He's posted a bunch of times like PDFs about ways of manipulating the software. Sibelius and Finale. You got to go in and change the library settings and the font settings so that things look different and look a little more clean. And the reason that I use bigger chord symbols is because I did a gig 15 or 16, and I had the great tenor player Ron Blake subbing in my band for Lucas, and he was like, man, these chord symbols are way too small. Like, what are you doing? And I was like, oh, okay. Sorry. And I just realized that I needed to learn how to use Finale a little bit better so that I could actually have somebody read the music. So that was pretty interesting, and I kind of got crapped on for that one, but it was all good. So Chris, I think that's the answer. I think it was Futura, or maybe it was Gotham or something like that, where you have to go into the settings, the library settings, to change those. So we're doing some live questions here, so feel free to leave some other ones if you guys want. Let's see, Tucker.showkier. 2 questions. One, he says, I want to study at UNT. What is one piece of advice for prospective UNT College of Music students? And 2, if a student only pursues one degree level there, should it be undergrad or graduate level? He says, like, maybe which degree level would you think I could get the most out of UNT's resources? Well, going for undergrad, you'll have 4 years. I don't know. Oh, there we go. We're back. I didn't go through the program myself, so I can only answer from my perspective, which is a faculty perspective. I think you could get a lot out of it in 2 years or 4 years. It just depends on what your goals are and where you're at. I mean, if you come in needing a lot of information, the school definitely has a lot of information to give. It's definitely a place where you're going to have a lot of time to shed, and a lot is going to be expected of you. There's a lot of assignments, a lot of tunes to learn, a lot of concerts, a lot of events to go to if you want to be keeping busy and stuff. If you want a low-key experience, UNT might not be the best fit. But if you only had to pursue one degree there, I would say, it kind of related to the advice I gave the other person at the beginning of the live stream. I think for your master's, you should be more specialized, and I think at UNT you can be very general in your first couple of years and really experience a lot of different stuff. Maybe some of the students that are on, I know that some of them are watching, can chime in with any of their thoughts too. I'm sure that you'd be into hearing from them directly, but I think there's a lot of opportunities to try a lot of different stuff as an undergrad. And there's a lot of ways to be really super specialized too as a grad student at UNT. But if I was going to say, I guess I would say, if you're just going to pick one, then I would pick undergrad, because then you could take all those general skills that you've developed from UNT and take them to a specialized place afterwards. So if that means a bigger state school so you can be a TA or something, or if you want to go to New York or go to LA, it's going to set you up in those ways as long as you are working. I mean, pretty much wherever you go, in my opinion, you have to do the work. I mean, it doesn't matter who the faculty are and where the school is, even though those things play into it. It's really about in which place that you audition are you going to be the most successful based on the environment and you deciding that you're going to do what you want to do. Because every school is going to have stuff that you don't want to do that you have to do. It was the same at Juilliard, it was the same at Eastman, it's the same at UNT, it was the same at Florida State. It's the same for every school I've ever talked to anyone about. There's something with stuff that you're not going to want to do that you have to do. So that's my answer, I think. I'm happy to elaborate more, Tucker, sometime. But feel free to shoot me a DM if you have something more specific you're wondering about. But we look forward to hearing your application when the time comes. So scrolling back down here, Harry O doing, you're very welcome. Thanks for watching. Go to work, make some money. Garnett Miller, how does one work on improving your swing/time feel? A lot of jazz educators talk about locking to that triplet swing subdivision and accenting the offbeats. But some people say that sounds old. Yeah, it sounds old. It sounds ricky-ticky. That's not how I try to think about it. If you want to measure it, that is one way to measure it, but that's not how I describe it. So let me describe how I describe it first, and then I'll tell you how to practice it, or how I would suggest practicing it. Obviously, I am just one person. I do not have the only opinion about this, so I think that if you go do da 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 da, that's not what jazz sounds like. Let me just sing part of a J.J. Johnson solo. Or no, how about Blue Train? Boo-doo dee dee da. Curtis. Boo-doo dee da da doo dee da da ba doo 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 dee dee da ba da doo dee 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 da ba doo da. Did any of that sound like doo da doo da doo da doo da? No. So this is how I conceive of the eighth notes. They are not even, but they're also not straight. They're somewhere in the middle, and you can't say that they're all triplety, because they're not. In big band, sometimes you're going to play something that's like do da do da do da da, some big band phrase or whatever. But in a small group setting, in an improvisational setting, I like to think about the lope of the eighth notes. I know that's kind of a weird thing to say, but if you think about it in groups of four, and I think about it in 2-beat segments, so 4 eighth notes, and it's more like dee ba da da dee da 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 dee da 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 dee da da da. And if you notice, I'm accenting the downbeat, not the upbeat, because the swing does not come from accenting every other eighth note. The swing comes from accenting notes that go with the line. So especially in playing bebop language, it has to do with the line more than it has to do with every other note. And you'll notice that it actually has a lot of downbeat accents, a lot more downbeat accents than you think. If you think about, I'm just trying to think of a quick example, but if you just think even heads like confirmation, right? But that's a downbeat. On and off, right? So without that strong downbeat, you can't have the syncopate or the accented offbeats. You have to have a strong downbeat. So I really dislike when educators say the thing about accent, the triplet, and every other one. It's like, yeah, but that's only part of the story, and it's not the full story. You want, dabba-doo, ba-dabba-doo, ba-doo, da-da-ba-doo, ba-hiddle-doo-doo, da-doo, da-da-doo, dee-da, ba-da-da, boo-dee-da-da, dee, diddle-doo-dee-dee-dee-da. There's so many phrases, but it's all downbeats. There's no upbeats at all. So it's not true. That's kind of how I look at it. It's not true. The swing doesn't come from that. It comes from the accents. So that's part one. Part two is, how do you practice it? Garnett says. So you do this by playing along with people that have a great time feel. So for me, that's JJ, that's Slide, that's Curtis. Other people too. There's lots of great examples, but those are the ones that I go to. Other instruments too, like Clifford Brown has great eighth notes that are accessible to play. Lee Morgan, you can play some Lee Morgan on trombone. They have great eighth note feel. So I go to those people and I listen, and then I transcribe, and then I play along with that person. And then I play along with that person in headphones, and I record myself, and then I listen to my eighth note feel. And then I try to get deep into hearing the ride pattern of great drummers, right? And trying to see how, when you're listening, I'm getting super nerdy specific here, but see how a soloist's eighth notes line up or don't line up with the interpretation of the drummer, because every drummer has a little bit different placement of that skip beat. Ding, dang, ga-dang, dang, ga-dang, dang, ga-dang. Some of it's closer together, like dang, ga-dang, dang, ga-dang, dang, ga-dang. And some of it's real triplety, like Elvin Jones. Da, 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 da. So this is a very long answer to your very not relatively simple question, but listen, play along, transcribe, and focus on the eighth note flow. Focus on how they feel, how they go through time, and that lope. I know it's a weird word, but it's that's how I like to think about it, man. Just the lope of the eighth notes. Don't play every other eighth note accented, because it's not what jazz sounds like. If you can find one bebop solo that sounds like that for the whole solo, I would be very surprised. Even, I was just listening to Ben Webster last night, and even him, he's not playing like that. He doesn't go do da do da do da do da do da. No, he's not. So, and anyway, that's my long diatribe about eighth notes, and it's something that I tell every single high school band that I go to work with, and sometimes college bands too. And I was just working with a college band on Monday, and we were talking about this exact same thing, because it's pervasive. That and the blues scale. The wrong usage of the blues scale. I mean, it's great as a starting point, but it's really problematic once you start learning about harmony. To just say, you only use the blues scale. It's a good starting point for jamming out over F7 or something, but anyway, I don't need to get into that and bore everybody with my opinions about the blues scale. But yeah, so hopefully that helped, Garnett. Everyone that's here, feel free to drop in some questions. You're very welcome, Garnett. If you're on YouTube later, obviously just leave some questions. We'll circle back. But I had a bunch of questions from this week that I didn't get to answer, so I'm going back through those. And if you left a question today, those will be moved to the next live stream with Lucas Pino. We're still out on the road, and we had to reschedule for tomorrow. But let me go through this list one more time. If anyone else wants to drop something in, feel free to do so. I just don't want to miss anything here. Let's see. We talked about cast of characters. Answered some of these questions in the last live stream. If you missed the last live stream, it is up on YouTube. It'll be up tomorrow, so you can go and check that out. Essential albums, composing. We talked about last time. We talked about playing like wedding gigs and non-creative music gigs, and how you make that transition from playing lots of working gigs to playing only creative gigs, which I'm not sure when you get to a place where you only play creative gigs, but definitely more. That's definitely a thing. And yeah, so mostly I want to thank Augustus Bradbury for that very, very thoughtful, deep question that he asked before. And I feel like there was one more from another day, but maybe I'm wrong. So anyway, if there's not any more questions, I'm going to sign off for tonight, but I'm really glad you guys could be here. And one more time, I was talking at the beginning about vitamin E oil. If your chops are drying out, because mine split this morning, so I got to take care of that. So yeah, this will be up on YouTube in a couple of days, so thanks for being here. Feel free, as always, you can send me a DM, if you have any other questions, and we'll see if we can get them into a future live stream. So keep on practicing, and we'll see you next time.